Today, we're going to look into a pretty dark and, honestly, a distorted mirror. It's one held up by a figure who seems to thrive on our discomfort. We're about to explore what society tries so desperately to keep hidden away in the shadows.
So let's just dive right in with a question for you. Have you ever seen a parody or heard a joke that felt, well, a little too real? You know, a joke that wasn't just funny, but actually made you feel kind of unsettled because it got so close to a truth that maybe we'd all rather just ignore? That exact feeling, that's our starting point.
The character responsible for this feeling is what we're going to call the uncanny jester. Now, this isn't your average comedian. Think of it more as an archetype, a force that holds up this warped, funhouse mirror to all of us, to civilization itself. And it shows us our hidden failures, our moral decay, not with some boring lecture, but with a terrifying, over-the-top, grotesque grin.
Okay, so let's start with our first parable. This one introduces a version of the jester that you might call the truth-telling monster.
I want you to picture a scene of, profound public sadness. A disaster has just happened. The air is thick with grief and shock. Everyone is doing what they're supposed to do, performing the correct emotions, playing their part in this social ritual of mourning. And then, a single sound just cuts right through all of it.
Yeah, laughter. A cold, clear, and completely out-of-place laugh. It comes from the jester. And in that one moment, the entire social agreement just shatters. That familiar performance of grief suddenly feels totally alien, completely absurd.
And what's happening here is this massive clash. On one side, you have society, which demands grief. It demands solemnity. But on the other side, the jester's laugh is mirroring the cold, uncaring indifference of nature itself. It's reflecting a reality that all our social rituals are basically designed to help us forget.
So what does this monstrous laugh actually reveal? Well, for one, it exposes the universe's complete indifference to us, pulling back the curtain on our comforting myths. It gives a voice to that secret nihilism that society harbors but never ever says out loud. It shows us that our social contract is really just a paper-thin layer over absolute chaos. And maybe, just maybe, our moral outrage isn't really about justice, but it's a mask for our deep, existential fear of a world without meaning.
Now, our next jester doesn't operate in moments of tragedy. No, this one works in the halls of power. Let's take a look at the gilded satirist who targets the elite from the inside.
So picture this, a huge, fancy banquet celebrating wealth and influence. The gilded satirist is right there in the middle of it, but he's not there to criticize. He's there to participate, but with this horrifying intensity. He outdoes every single person at their own game of excess, amplifying their greed and their vanity until it's just grotesque.
His whole performance is basically screaming this message. See, he isn't hiding his raw, naked desire for power behind polite excuses or charity. He embodies that will to power in its most unrefined form, which has the effect of making everyone else's carefully hidden ambitions look both pathetic and kind of sinister.
And that is the uncanny reflection. The powerful, they see themselves as noble leaders, right? Pillars of the community. But the jester's mirror shows them what their unchecked ambition really makes them. Parasites, feasting on the very system they claim to be holding up.
His grotesque parody forces everyone in that room to confront some really uncomfortable truths. The vanity that's hiding behind philanthropy, the raw ambition behind their leadership, and of course, the exploitation that's needed to fuel their lavish world. He turns their party into a haunting reminder of what it really costs.
Okay, our third archetype, the pathetic madman, brings his mirror to the modern temple of consumerism. Imagine, right in the heart of a bustling shopping mall, surrounded by all this hollow consumption, a guy just starts shouting deep philosophical truths, that our central values are dead. And then he just starts this bizarre, frantic dance. It makes zero sense, but at the same time, it perfectly mirrors the chaotic, meaningless energy of the world he's in.
And that's his challenge to the crowd. He's accusing their normal, everyday behavior, their sanity, of being the real madness. It's a lie, a story they tell themselves, to avoid looking into the void that's left when our old values disappear.
So what's really going on here? Well, the crowd's so-called sanity is just mindless shopping, a distraction. The jester's madness, his wild dance, is actually a more honest response to a world that's lost its spiritual center. He's reflecting the very chaos they're trying to shop away.
His uncanny performance just cuts right through all that complacency. It reveals a culture that's traded deep meaning for cheap stuff, and his senseless dance, well, it's a perfect metaphor for the frantic, empty pace of so many of our lives.
And finally, we have to go to the digital world, where the jester has evolved into a new and, let's be honest, a particularly nasty form, the anonymous troll.
This is the troll's core accusation, isn't it? Hurled from behind the safety of a screen, he targets that performative kindness, that carefully curated morality you see all over social media, and he wants to tear it all down with pure, unfiltered malice. The troll is attacking the very idea of public kindness. In philosophical terms, he's going after what Nietzsche called slave morality, this value system that praises virtues like humility and compassion. The troll sees the online version of this as total hypocrisy, a performance the masses use to try and control the strong, and he is there to expose it.
But here is the most unsettling part. The troll isn't just one person. That feeling of uncanny horror you get from online trolls, it comes from that slow, dawning realization that the troll is actually a reflection of the collective unconscious. He gives voice to all the ugly, resentful, cruel thoughts that so many people have but would never, ever dare to say out loud. He is our shared digital shadow.
So, after witnessing these monstrous, satirical, and absolutely maddening performances, what is the ultimate point? Why does the uncanny jester even exist?
Well, the jester's purpose is actually pretty profound. It's a process. First, he uses that uncomfortable mirror to expose the rot. Then, he forces us to confront our own hidden darkness, our shadow. The real challenge, then, is to see all of this ugliness and still say yes to life, to accept it as part of the whole package. And if we can do that, the result is a kind of radical liberation from all the lies we tell ourselves.
And really, that's where we have to leave it. The jester stops us from falling into a terminal state of self-deception. His reflections are deeply, deeply uncomfortable, for sure, but they might also be a pathway to a more honest way of living. So the only question left is, when that mirror finally turns to you, what do you see?